Okay, we are on Daf Chaf Vav Amud Bet 26b2. The Gemara begins. Bishlosha perakim bashana Kohanim nosim et kapehem. 3 points, 3 times in the year, the Kohanim do Birkat Kohanim. Okay? Now we'll see exactly that it's not about the fact that they do Birkat Kohanim at 3 times. It's about how many times they do Birkat Kohanim when they do Bayom. So Bishlosha perakim bashana. If you turn back to the Mishnah, turn back to one page to Chavav Amud Aleph, one more page in the art scroll. Bishlosha prakim, on 3 times in the year, Kohanim nosim et kapehem arba pa'amim bayom. There's this opportunity of 4 times to bless during the day. B'shachrit, b'musaf, b'mincha, right? See? Yes. B'shachrit, b'musaf, b'mincha, u'b'neilat she'arim. So Taanit, and when are those 3 times, says the Mishnah? During the fasts, during the Ma'amadot, and as well B'Yom HaKippurim, during Yom Kippur. Okay? So that's what the Mishnah said. Now the Gemara is going to pull this apart and see how it feels about each part of that sentence. Okay? Bishlosha prakim b'shana kohanim nosim et kapehem. 3 times in the year, they do beracha of kohanim 4 times in a day. Shachrit mincha, Shachrit Musaf Mincha Neila. Taaniyot u'ma'amadot mi'ika Musaf. What are you talking about? You have Musaf on holidays. You have Musaf on Shabbat, because that mirrors the Korban Musaf that they used to bring in the Beit HaMikdash. But on Taaniyot, when you declare a fast day, there's no Musaf prayer. So therefore, Ma'amadot as well, it's a regular day during the week. So, right, remember what the Ma'amadot are? It's the different timings when the Kohanim would go up and the Leviim would go up and the Israelim that lived in Jerusalem would be there with the Korban, and the Jews that did not live in Jerusalem would fast for the 4 days during the week and recite the special Torah readings through the Ma'amadot, okay? So those days, you don't have Musaf every day of Ma'amadot, okay? Answers the Gemara, Chesure mechsera v'hachi katani. This is an important understanding with regards to understanding the Mishnah. So, what does this mean? The Mishnah tells you A, and then the Gemara is like, oh, you know what? Mishnah is missing a few words. It should say, the first time I saw this, I was like, what? You ever see like there's an advertisement for T-Mobile? They're like, okay, from now on, free calls, free text, free data. And then there's a little star. Right. Or, I don't know if you ever noticed, by the way, sometimes there's a star, it's the asterisk. Sometimes instead of the asterisk, they put like a cross. You ever see that? There's like a cross. And I said, do you know why they had a cross there? Because they're telling you about what they're about to do to you. They're literally going to crucify you when you look down at the bottom. Because yes, it's free, all free, with your paid subscription of $997 for this, and if you were born on Tuesday, and your mother is a goat, just a few different, terms and conditions. Morris, T's and C's, nachon? So that's what's going on here. Chisure mechsa. The Mishnah is like, if you do this, patur. And the rabbis are like, well, not exactly. That doesn't mean patur, it doesn't mean you. If it doesn't mean this, it doesn't mean doing. What's going on? How could you do this? How could you butcher the Mishnah? And not only that, if the Mishnah seems to say patur, if the Mishnah seems to say mutar, how could the Chachamim come and say chayav, patur? It's not what the Mishnah says. The rabbis of the Gemara did not have the power to undo what was said in the Mishnah or in a Braita. An Amorah cannot argue on a Tana. So how could the Gemara come along and say the Mishnah doesn't mean that? Here, let's throw in some extra words. So it's important to understand, Chisure mechsara v'hachi katani is part of the Misorah. It's part of the way the halachot were explained to them, just like the Mishnah is part of the Misorah. Except there came a time when they were forgetting the Misorah, so Rabbi Yehuda Nasi collated the most important elements of halacha, and he collated it into the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. But each one of these Mishnayot was effectively part of a conversation. So you ever read the newspaper and you see they're quoting someone and then there's like parentheses?
Yeah.
Like they're like, and David said, and it doesn't say David, but parentheses. The answer is that the interviewer is telling you, we were in the middle of talking about David. And when he said, the guy's a crook, he meant David's a crook. But you don't know that if you don't have the context. So you're just reading, he's a crook. Or even worse, imagine the article says, they're all crooks. And then it says on the side, we were talking about David and his father and his brother. He doesn't mean everybody's a crook. Chisure mechsera, you're missing something. You're missing the context. You don't know the conversation we were having. You don't know the placement of where this Mishnah is coming in. So chisure mechsera v'achi katani is not giving you less context or changing the nature of the Mishnah. In fact, what it's doing is, it's clarifying that this was where the Mishnah was said. Okay? Says the Gemara, Chisure mechsera, the words, there's a couple words missing here in your understanding. V'achi katani, and this is how you should understand it. There's 3 occasions during the year that the Kohanim do Birkat Kohanim. Kol zman shemitpalelim, every time that they pray. So in other words, they do Birkat Kohanim in every prayer. V'yesh mehen arba pa'amim b'yom, and some, i.e. how many? 1. V'yesh mehen, there's even an occurrence where they do it 4 times. Okay? When is that? That's obviously Yom Kippur. Shacharit Musaf Mincha Unilat Sharim. Ve'elu hen, and now we go back, and what are the days that the Kohanim say, Birkat Kohanim, every prayer that they say? Yani, Shacharit Mincha Ne'ilah, or Shacharit Musaf Mincha Ne'ilah, right? On Yom Kippur. So when are those occasions? Those occasions are the fast day, the Taaniyot, and the Ma'amadot. Because on the Taanit, if you remember, there was an extra element of Ne'ilat Sha'arim. So you have Shachrit, you have Mincha, and you have Ne'ilah. Okay, so they would even say Birkat Kohanim during Mincha on the Ma'amadot. Okay, let's carry on. The Gemara now asks, okay, so I hear what you're saying. Amar Rav Nachman taught. Amar Rabba bar Avua. He said in the name of Rabba bar Avua. Okay? So let's look at that adjustment that you just made to the Mishnah, and I want to understand who is that going according to. This whole idea is Zu Divrei Rabbi Meir. This is the opinion, this is the Shita of Rabbi Meir. But that opinion of Rabbi Meir was not universally accepted. The Chachamim actually disagree. Chachamim omrim shacharit musaf yesh behen nisiat kapayim. You have Birkat Kohanim at Shacharit and Musaf, right? Mincha u'ne'ilah en b'hem nesiut kapayim. There's no, what's it called? There's no Birkat Kohanim for the second 2 tefillot of Mincha and Ne'ilah, okay? Now, if you don't have Musaf, so then you might still have Mincha and Ne'ilah, right? So the Ma'amadot and the Ta'aniyot, like we just said. Says the Gemara, Aman Chachamim, who is this Chachamim that you're telling me that disagrees with Rabbi Meir? The Gemara says Rabbi Yehuda, it's the opinion expressed by Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya, because we have a Braita, the Braita says Shachrim Musaf Mincha Ne'ilah Kulan Yesh B'hem Nisiut Kapayim. You always pray with Birkat Kohanim. Different Rabbi Meir. This is the opinion of Rabbi Meir, like we just showed you. The Rabbi Meir holds that they say Tefillah Nisiat Kapayim in every prayer. But Rabbi Yehuda says Shachrit Musaf Yesh B'hem Nisiut Kapayim. Mincha Ne'ilah Em B'hem Nisiut Kapayim. Mincha Ne'ilah they don't have Birkat Kohanim. Rabbi Yossi says no. Ne'ilah Yesh B'hem Nisiut Kapayim. Mincha En B'hem Nisiut Kapayim. Mincha in Hazara does not have Nisiut Kapayim does not have. So if we're talking about all 4, right? Which day has all 4? We said earlier.
Yom Kippur.
Really, only Yom Kippur? Huh?
Don't we do Kohanim 4 times on Kippur?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So the only example of that would be Yom Kippur. Okay? The Gemara says, B'maika miflagi. What are they arguing in? Right? Rabbi Meir Savar, Rabbi Meir holds right? Kol yoma tamamai lo parsika ane yadayu. Every day. What's the reason why you would have a prayer, any prayer, where the Kohanim would not give a beracha, b'mincha, right? During the afternoon. Mishum shichrut, because they're worried about people being drunk. Why is that a problem? We have a halakha. The halakha says, after the story of Nadav and Avihu, one of the 6 reasons that's brought down why they died on that day is because they came into to do the avodah when they were drunk. And therefore, there's a pasuk in Torah says that if a Kohen, is not allowed to go do the avodah, right, when they're shtu yayin, when they already had something to drink.
That's why we don't do it during mincha.
Oh, so with that concept, the Gemara is now explaining that not just are we going to say this halacha with regards to serving in the Beit HaMikdash, we're going to conflate nisiut kapayim in wherever,
all prayers,
we're going to conflate that to the avodah in the Beit HaMikdash. So if right now in shichrut you were unable to go bring a korban, so in shichrut, in drunkenness, you're also not allowed to do nisiat kapayim. Why are they worried that all Kohanim are going to be drunk? What kind of thing is this? What's the answer?
Nadav and Avihu?
Yeah, but we're worried that all Kohanim forever.
Because you have lunch.
Oh, so this is interesting. Now we don't understand this because for us, you have lunch, you have this, you need.
Simcha
Back
was
then,
right?
Forget the simcha is only relevant on the holiday though.
Shabbat too, no?
No, actually, no. There's no mitzvah of simcha on Shabbat. There's a mitzvah of oneg on Shabbat. Okay, oneg, it doesn't say a person does not have to drink wine on Shabbat. They don't. Yom Tov is a din of basar v'yayin because it says samachta b'chagecha. Okay, now you might have oneg on Shabbat, but it's not specifically the oneg of meat and wine. Now, what we're learning over here is that, and it's really important. Back in the day, wine for them was like water. They didn't drink soda or juice during the meal. They had wine at every meal, right?
No Coca-Cola.
That was a part of the way that they lived their life. So if you have an afternoon meal and it's stretching during the day, so we're worried the Kohanim, like anybody else, might come back, inebriated, and if that's the case, then they would not be allowed to make Birkat Kohanim. I never understood why we didn't just say, okay, so don't.
Right.
Self-monitor. Right? We don't have a law that says that there's no Korban Tamid because it's in the afternoon and people might have eaten lunch. It's for the Kohanim are going to do that. The answer is that whereas with regards to the, to the Avodah, you only need one Kohen to do it, so the guy who's not will do it. Here, the mitzvah is for everybody, right? All the Kohanim will go up to Nisiat Kapayim. So, you might have the guy who's maybe not able to make that decision for himself. I haven't met yet a drunk that thinks that he's drunk. Okay. Carry on. Says the Gemara, it's Mishum Shichrut, and therefore, on the day of a Ma'amad, or the day of Yom Kippur, since the people are fasting, so then there's no problem of Shichrut. Okay? It's clear from here, by the way, that the fast that we said about the Ma'amad is not only for Yisrael. The implication was that was only for Yisrael. But here you see in the Gemara that the Gemara is saying that the Kohanim also are not eating. Because otherwise, right, okay? Otherwise, why would the Ma'amad change that? Why would that change the Ha'idna leka shichrut? I guess the Gemara would say, according to the opinion that maybe that the Kohanim don't have to fast, they would say Ha'idna refers to Yom Kippur and not to the Ma'amadot. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Savar. So now, what's the Rabbi Yehuda who the Gemara said was the Chachamim? Okay. What did they say? They said Shacharit and Musaf, but not Mincha and Ne'ilah, correct? That's what we just saw?
Yeah.
Right? Rabbi Yehuda from the Braita says, Rabbi Meir starts, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Shacharit Musaf yesh b'hem Yisud Kapayim, Mincha u'Ne'ilah en b'hem Yisud Kapayim. And then you have Rabbi Yossi that says, Ne'ilah yes, and Mincha no. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Yehuda Savar, Shacharit Musaf, yes. Tichol Yom Alo Shchiach Shichrut, that every day, that there's no drunkenness, person's not going to drink at that point in the morning. Lo gazru Rabanan. There was no gezerah. Mincha v'ne'ilah. Once we hit mincha v'ne'ilah, dichol yom hashchicha shichrut. that on an average day there is shechrut. So they made gazur be'rabanan. So they made a gezerah. Once the chachamim made a gezerah that mincha ni'ilah out, mincha ni'ilah always out. Why? Because of the law that they made, the gezerah they made, because of a regular day. So the Rabbi Yehuda holds that the gezerah is not relevant today, but it applies today. Okay? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rav. Halacha kirbi meir. Halacha is like Rabbi Meir that we say Birkat Kohanim even at Mincha and Ne'ilah. Rabbi Yochanan Omer. Rabbi Yochanan says Na'agu ha'am ki Rabbi Meir. The people hold. What's the community do? They follow the opinion of Rabbi Meir. V'Rava Amar. Rava says also the same thing. Minhag ki Rabbi Meir. Now it sounds like three different people saying three different things, but in effect, aren't they saying the same thing? First says halacha ki Rabbi Meir. Second says the people do like Rabbi Meir. The third thing says minhag ki Rabbi Meir. What's the difference between these three opinions? Why were they all necessary? Now, manda amar halacha ki Rabbi Meir. The first opinion that said or expressed it with the language that halacha is like Rabbi Meir. Dashina lebepirka. Right. What that means is that we teach this idea when we're teaching the halakha. Manda amar minhag, the opinion that says it's a minhag but not a halakha, midrash lo darshinan, uruye morinan, right? So what it means is we're not getting up and teaching this berabim, but at the same time we'll tell if someone comes to ask the halakha, we'll tell him what the halakha is. Manda amar naagu, and the person that says that's what they do, we don't give the halakha, we don't give the ruling, but nahagu, that's what people do. So if someone does something like that, we don't pull him off and say you're not supposed to be up there. It's mincha u'ne'ilah. The guy already went up. We don't stop him. Fascinating that only yesterday I gave you this idea of halakha and morim ken, right? With regards to Yosef and the Nachashim Akravim. So we have this idea that a person that there's three different ways that we look at the canon of halakha. There are things which are halakha that you teach everybody. Then there's things that are halakha but you don't teach. If it's a halakha, why don't you teach it?
It doesn't pertain today?
Dangerous. Imagine you tell everyone, guys, everyone has to do this. What happens to the drunk guy?
You get drunk.
That's the halakha. That's what they said. That's what they taught. Everybody's got to do it. The fact that there isn't a clear consensus because we're not teaching it in halakha means that it's not so clear to everybody that that's what has to happen, which therefore means that the Kohen in that moment maybe makes the right decision and doesn't go up because of a lack of clarity. Okay? So the right thing winds up happening. Rav Nachman Amar. Rav Nachman says, halakha ki Rabbi Yossi. The halakha is not like Rabbi Meir. Rather, halakha is according to Rabbi Yossi. That whenever we have a Taanit and a fast or ma'amadot, the halakha is that we do ne'ilah but not mincha. Rav Nachman Amar, sorry. The halakha ki Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara ends that the halakha is like Rabbi Yossi. In fact, right, what happens on Yom Kippur, Jonah? We have chazara 4 times. Do the Kohanim do Birkat Kohanim and mincha?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Not 4 times.
I don't think so. You can check me on that, but I don't think so.
Trust you.
I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't trust me. I'm not sure. I'm fasting. It's the end of a long day. But we can get a. By the way, you can check it if you want. Google it now. So we'll have the correct answer. Okay. Halakha ki Rabbi Yossi. The halakha follows Rabbi Yossi, and therefore, as we said earlier, that would mean that we do shacharit, musaf, and ne'ilah, but not mincha. Now, what I love about the Gemara, this is just such a classic. Comes the Gemara. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav. We just saw halakha ki Rabbi Meir. Next opinion. Nahagu ki Rabbi Meir. The people do. That's what the people do. Rava Amar. Rava says minhag.
Right, not halakha, just minhag.
No, halakha ki Rabbi Meir. Comes the next Gemara. The Gemara says Rav Nachman casually says halakha ki Rabbi Yossi. Answers the Gemara and halakha is like Rabbi Yossi. What?
Where's the spin?
So there's a machloket, effectively, between Rava, between Rav Yehuda and between Rav Yochanan, the three opinions that we just had that say that the law follows Rabbi Meir in any of three different directions. And what are we saying? All of that's incorrect. Halakha Rabbi Yossi. What do we do with that? So here's where it gets interesting. It seems like we have a machlok at these three opinions and the opinion of Rav Nachman, but actually maybe not. Because one of those opinions said halacha ki Rabbi Meir. That one maybe can't jive with halacha ki Rabbi Yossi. But the other two opinions don't say halacha ki Rabbi Meir. In fact, the last opinion for sure that says Virava Amar, Rava says minhag ki Rabbi Meir, which as we translated it, if the person went up, we don't tell him to go down, he might actually hold that halacha is ki Rabbi Yossi, but minhag ki Rabbi Meir. Right, so it's interesting how that plays out. So at the very least, we have a different possibility, and in fact, you might have different opinions that say different things with regards to the halakha. But we, as a post-Gemara halachic decisor, need to figure out is what do we do now that we have two different people in the Gemara saying halakha ke? Effectively, all it really is the same machloket, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Meir, which now carries on to Rav Nachman and Rabbi Yehuda Marav. Right?
But once it says halakha, isn't it done?
Yeah.
Yes, but two people said halakha.
But this says the Gemara.
So they argued with each other on what the halakha is. And now the Gemara says on that, right? After saying Rav Nachman Amar halakha ki Rabbi Yossi, the Gemara then ruled the halakha ki Rabbi Yossi. Okay? So you have a machloket what the halakha is. So effectively, each one of those, Rav Nachman and Rav Yehuda Marav, were effectively summing up what they had learned and deciding, knowing all that I know, this is the halakha. And yet the Gemara then says, between the two people who summed up, we hold, like the opinion of Rav Nachman, that summed up that the halakha is that you say it in those three tefillot. Okay. Joni, you want to say something? Oh, I thought you were going to say, okay, fine. Let's carry on.
What's the reason that the Ashkenazim don't say Kohanim? Just because they didn't have Kohanim?
You mean every day?
Yeah.
Oh, so this is not, we're not talking here every day.
I know, just an offshoot question.
Because there's a question as to whether or not what happens outside of, it's post Bet HaMikdash, what happens with Birkat Kohanim on a daily basis. How do we relate to Birkat Kohanim on a daily basis? But I'll tell you something really interesting. There's a fascinating story that happened. Rav Aaron Leib Steinman, right, who was one of the Gedolei Hador, lived in Bnei Brak, literally was like the final word for a long time in Am Yisrael. One day he rocks up in Ateret. Random day, they turn around, the Ashkenaz Gadol Ador is praying in the Sephardic Minyan in Brooklyn. 900 Ashkenaz Minyans, by the way. He comes to the Sephardic place. He wasn't supposed to come. He wasn't scheduled to speak. So they went up to, what are you doing here? He says, I'm from Eretz Israel. I'm used to getting Birkat Kohanim every day. He goes, I can't deal with not getting Birkat Kohanim. So I knew if I come to a Sephardic Minyan, I have Birkat Kohanim.
But how does he get it every day?
Because in Eretz Israel, Ashkenazim do it too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Wow.
So it's an issue of post Bet HaMikdash in Chutz La'aretz.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Okay? Now there's even different areas in Eretz Israel, but if you go to, in Yerushalayim, Ashkenazim are doing Birkat Kohanim. Okay? Yeah? Let's carry on.
Super cool.
So is there ever there's 4 in a day?
Sorry?
Is there ever a time that there's 4 in a day?
According to, what's it called?
But not according to the halakha of Rav Yossi.
Correct.
So even though, so the Mishnah is not, when we learn the Mishnah, it's only saying the point. It didn't give the final answer.
No, it could also be in the Beit HaMikdash on Yom Kippur, or in the Beit HaMikdash on the Ma'amadot.
Because at that time they did it during the Mincha also.
Yeah, I mean, it's a possibility. Yeah? Okay. Let's carry on. V'ha'idna. My ta'ama, pasik kohanei yadayu b'minchatat ta'anita. So, now that that's the halakha, why do we have the kohanim doing mincha, what's it called? On ta'anit. So, if you go on mincha in what's it called? On a regular ta'anit, right, that we have, so we do kohanim, right? I don't think Ashkenazim do, right? Because like every other day they don't do. They only do it on the holiday, right? So for us, minha na ta'anit we do. Of course, remember we're talking about over here specific ta'aniyot, not the regular ta'aniyot. We're talking about ta'aniyot that were instituted for rain, and according to some opinions, not the first set of ta'aniyot, but the middle and the last ones. Says the Gemara. So why, if that's the case that we just explained, that we're following Rabbi Yossi, so why do we do mincha? The Gemara says, since we're talking about a mincha which happens right by the edge of Shki'ah, that's when we're praying mincha on such a day. Tfilat ne'ilah damya, it is compared to tfilat ne'ilah. Now, if we go back for a second, we had this idea, if you remember, that Rabbi Yossi said that that you say during ne'ilah but not during mincha, correct?
Yes.
Now, we explained that that the opinion of Rabbi Meir is that on these days you do it because there's no drunkenness. Comes Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda says no, all mincha ne'ilah also out. Why? We make a gezerah in the place of drunkenness, so therefore it applies on all days. What was the third opinion? Rabbi Yossi said, mincha de'ita b'chol yoma, mincha, I think we might have skipped this actually. Mincha de'ita b'chol yoma, mincha you have every day, gazu b'rabanan. Ne'ilah de'leta b'chol yoma, ne'ilah that you don't have every day, so they didn't make this extra gezerah for something that was only relevant sometimes. Because it only comes around here and there. So according to that opinion, so why, according to Rabbi Yossi, should we say mincha, kohanim, why should we have kohanim, mincha, and ta'anit? His answer is, because since mincha we do samuch right next to the end of the day, it's considered like the ne'ilah because they're said at that same time. It's not a standard mincha that they would do, perhaps closer to the middle of the afternoon as well. I was wondering, truth be told, also, the later it is, the less there is a reason to do the gezerah because it's further from that meal. So the less possibility of shechrut. However, that's not what the Gemara seems to be saying in Rabbi Yossi. It seems to be saying that mincha we did a gezerah because it's regular. Ne'ilah, it comes up only occasionally, we didn't make a gezerah. That's a really important law to know in the process of halakha. The Gemara says this often. Milta de lo shchicha, lo gazruhu behu rabanan. A thing which is not commonplace, the Chachamim did not make a gezerah. They weren't there to go and exclude this once-in-a-lifetime experience of something happening. It's only things that were commonplace that they were worried about something taking root that they made a gezerah. This is also the source of the idea in halakha called mikre nadir. That when there's a gezerah and there's this wild case which never comes up, then we say they were never gozer in this place. Because this never happens. This is not a normal case. So sometimes the fact that something is not regular is enough to say that it's not part of the gezerah. Fascinating. So we're learning that idea here, but it actually has applications in other places as well. Okay? Let's carry on. The Gemara says, Dekule alma mihat shikor asur b'nesiat kapayim. Everyone, right, that we just mentioned, we all hold that a shikor, that someone who's drunk is not allowed to do nesiat kapayim. The question is, do we extend the gezerah from days that you would be drinking to days that you would not be drinking? Do we extend the gezerah to a tefillah that you have every day, or only to a tefillah that you have occasionally? Right? All of those are different iterations of whether or not we extend the gezerah. But everyone, all the opinions, Rabbi Meir included, hold that a shikor is not allowed to do birkat kohanim. But how do we get that idea? Where did that come from? Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi says, Mishum bar kapara, in the name of bar kapara, Lama nisbecha parashat Kohen mevarech? Why did we put in the Torah the parasha which talks about the blessings of the Kohanim, the parashat Nazir, to the parasha of a Nazir, a person who holds themselves back from various things through the process of Nazir? Lomar, to teach you, ma Nazir asur beyayin, just like a Nazir is asur in wine, he's not allowed to drink wine, he's not allowed to have any connection with wine, so too, where are we?
26b4.
So too, right? Af Kohen mivarech asu bayayin. So too, a Kohen that is doing a beracha is not allowed to drink wine. The Gemara says, hold up. If that's the case, Matkif Lavod Rabbi Zera, the father of Rabbi Zera, asked a brilliant question. It's a question we should all be asking. Ve'amri la Oshia bar Zavda. Some people say it was Oshia bar Zavda who asked the question. Iman Nazir asur bechartzan. A Nazir we know is asur even in the seeds of the grape. Right? We know michatzan ad zag, the pasuk says. So we know that expression of a Nazir is much more strict. Af Kohen mevarech asur bechartzan. So we should say that a Kohen that had grape seeds, right, even just something as small as that, already he's not allowed to do Birkat Kohanim, and that nobody says. Okay? The Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Kra, Rabbi Yitzchak says in the name of the pasuk, L'shareto u'lvarech b'shmo, that a person who is blessing in the name of God, u'lvarech b'shmo, is juxtaposed, connected to l'shareto, to serve him. So if the Torah considers, not here, but elsewhere, that shareto, serving God in the temple, is the same as blessing God, so therefore, ma misharet mutar b'chartzan, just as someone who serves misharet, the Beit HaMikdash, is allowed to have grapes, but he can't drink wine, af kohen mevarech, just so too a kohen that blesses is allowed to have a chartzan. Now, there's an interesting thing here, because once you tell me that you have a pasuk that says l'shareto l'varech b'shmo, that serving in the temple is compared to blessing in God's name, you don't really need anymore the connection of the closeness of the parashiyot of what's it called to a Nazir, right? Because now I have this hekesh of l'shareto l'varech b'shmo. So why am I using that scriptural closeness of Nazir to here to Birkat Kohanim? Let me just learn it from the fact that the Torah said l'shareto l'varech b'shmo. Yeah.
Yes.
So I think there's a powerful answer to that, but we'll come back to it in a minute because the Gemara is still in the middle of asking questions. What should be the next question? The next obvious question, even if you don't see the Gemara ahead. What should be the next obvious question? If you told me that we connected Nazir and serving in the temple. So therefore, if a Nazir is not allowed to drink wine, a Kohen is not allowed to drink wine.
What about everyone else?
Sorry?
What about everyone else?
Nope.
No, because you're connecting it to the Beit HaMikdash.
But doesn't everyone serve in the Beit HaMikdash? Don't the Levim do stuff in the Beit HaMikdash?
No, not the Shareto that's talking about in the Pasuk. In the Pasuk, it connects Birkat Kohanim to Nazir. So what's the next obvious question?
A Kohen can drink wine. He just can't drink. He just can't drink and do the blessing. You're not saying.
No, but we're connecting the blessing with. So a Kohen that's blessing is connected to a Nazir because in blessing he can't do what the Nazir can't do. Morris.
What other things can the Nazir do?
Cut your hair.
Kohen can
There's other things he can't cut his. What about hair cutting?
Tashfi.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the essence of the person.
Sorry.
It doesn't change the essence of the person. Drinking does.
Who cares? Once you told me, you put them together. So you're saying that these two things are connected. So if these two things are connected, so other things that the Nazir can't do, the Kohen can't do. What's a third thing, by the way? It's not relevant.
Cut your hair, drink, and
Contact with
women.
But dead?
dead bodies. But a Kohen also can't serve Tameh. By the way, could a Kohen that's Tameh do Birkat Kohanim not in the Beit HaMikdash?
Wow.
because we just have closeness, that should tell you no. Okay? Okay. Says the Gemara. So the Gemara says, 1 second, if you just now told me that l'shareto ulvarech b'shmo, that's the case, imam misharet ba'al mum, right, lo, af kohen mevarech ba'al mum lo. Right? If you just connected those two, and that's how you told me that that's how we're going to qualify this connection to a Nazir, so then what do we do now? With regard to the fact that a Kohen in the Bet HaMikdash is not allowed to have a mum. Right. So then a Kohen that does a beracha also should not be allowed to do Birkat Kohanim. Right. The Gemara says, Ha'it kash the Nazir. So I have two things that it's compared to. One is, Birkat Kohanim is compared to service in the temple. The second thing is, Birkat Kohanim is compared to a Nazir. Ha'it kash the Nazir. Since a Nazir is not disqualified, he's not out from having a mum, right. So the Nazir balances the comparison to L'sharet. And L'sharet balances the comparison to a Nazir. So the answer to that question is going to be this way. Ask the Gemara, okay, I get you, 100%. Why did you decide to allow the connection to be more lenient, that this gets you out of it, and why don't you decide that we should make the hekesh to be machmir, hekesh l'chumra? Let's say, look, a person who's in the Beit HaMikdash could eat the seed of a grape, but it's also compared to a Nazir, so therefore he's not allowed to eat a grape. You're using the two things to balance it for the lower of the two. Maybe you should use it to balance it to the higher of the two.
Why are you rounding down?
Why are you rounding down? So again, Baal Mum is pasul in Shirut. Grape seeds are pasul in Nazir. Who said, oh, you know what? This is mutar because here it's mutar. This is mutar because here it's mutar. Maybe you should say the opposite. We compared the two, but even though it's mutar over here, but this is asur because here it's asur. This is asur because here it's asur. Make it asur to have the grapes like Nazir, asur to have ba'amum like shirut in the Beit HaMikdash, and connect the two, the chumrah. Answers the Gemara, asmachta ninu. Since it's an asmachta, which means it's a smachta means somech, which means to lean on. So you're leaning on something. And this leaning is not a deoraita. So since asmachta ninu midrabanan, so in every case where you have a question on a dirabanan, safek dirabanan, how do we go? Lekula. Every safek in a dirabanan is lekula. Every safek in a deoraita is lechumra. So we round it down because asmachta is midrabanan. Now this is very important. What are we learning here? That this idea of asmachta is a midrabanan, is that there are 13 ways Torah nidreshet bahem. Let's say I have a gezerah shava. Okay?
What does that mean?
A gezerah shava means that I had this word over here, and I find this word over here. And therefore you link them and you learn the halacha. Okay? We learn korbanot on holiday from the korbanot on the other holiday. Why? Because it uses the same word in both places. Now that's not a random thing that I thought of.
It's all over the Torah.
It's all over the Torah. It's one of the 13 ways, Torah nidreshet bahem. It's the Braita Rabbi Ishmael that we say in korbanot. Okay? Things that are learned out with the 13 ways that you doresh a Torah, if you have the right to be able to make that derasha, are from the Torah. But here we would just, so to speak, saying, oh, and I found a pasuk, or I found an idea that supports my idea. Okay, so here was an asmachta, and if it was drabanan, so therefore in each of those instances, we went likula. Okay, let's stop here. We'll carry on. 27A1, everyone, move the item.
Yes.
Hazaku Baruch, Hazaku Baruch.